Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on the ESPN app, our podcast, wherever you go ahead and do that thing. Rate us, review us. We like 5 stars. People think 4 stars is bad. Don't be a hater. We will talk about the conference finals in the NBA. We'll also talk about something that's popping in Milwaukee that you might want to get ready for. But first, old people tell you something like, in order to understand the present, you have to understand the past. You cannot walk into the future unless you understand the steps that people have taken along the way to get us to where we are. And so with that in mind, I would like to start this here particular podcast thinking about something that happened in the past. This was a couple of days ago, the 25th anniversary of something very important in the NBA, which is... It's the 25th, 24th. Yeah, we starting early. But it's the 24th anniversary of what was quite possibly the most disrespectful dunk in the history of the NBA.
Bounces, Myers, cross court, Scotty, and he went right over the top of him.
He said him was Pippen-Ewing, right? And it's funny how many of y'all didn't even need video to know what dunk it was that we were talking about right there, thanks to NBA TV right there with the audio. Scottie Pippen dunking on Pippen-Ewing in the 1994 Eastern Conference semifinals is the most disrespectful dunk that I have ever seen. Like, you got to remember, it was the era and those teams hated each other so much. After banging on him, Scottie pushed him down to the ground, stepped over him to put his crotch in his face, then walked over in front of Spike Lee and told him to sit down and shut the bleep up and to put that in a movie because Scottie was heated. I tell you, heated. If I'm not mistaken, by the way, that is the same series in which Scottie Pippen did not go in for that last play where Tony Kukoc made that three-pointer. Scottie had been through a whole lot that season. He was tired of the Bulls underpaying him, everything else, and they hated the Knicks. And those Georgetown boys loved getting dunked on. They were kind of like Aaron Baines if Aaron Baines blocked more shots because they just trying for everything. They're going for everything. And boom, he got yammed on. That was also the series, by the way, where Derek Harper and JoJo English got into a fight that went into the front row. And when I say the front row, I mean they basically fought in David Stern's lap. That happened. It was all of that going on. But the flagrant disrespect, 1, of being Scottie's size to try to dunk on Pippen-Ewing. 2, the fact that he pushed him down. 3, the fact that he stepped over him. 4, consider the fact that the Knicks were the Knicks and the disrespect was so flagrant. The disrespect was so palpable in the air. Charles Oakley complained to the refs. Charles Oakley complained to the refs. That's all it was. Now, look, I know a lot of y'all think there have been other disrespectful dunks. It's not just being like a great dunk on somebody. It's the disrespect in the action. So Shaq and Chris Dudley. Shaq was absolutely being disrespectful to Chris Dudley. He dunked on him, and then he pushed him, and then Chris Dudley got mad and threw the ball at him. And Shaq looked back at him and said, "What the bleep you gonna do?" That was very disrespectful, but that felt like a different kind of disrespect because if we're being honest, there's a certain element of bullying there. I don't believe in the idea that you can truly bully somebody if you're grown men and playing professional sports, but I do get that there was like a little bit of bullying element there. I get, but it wasn't the disrespect to Scottie. Sean Kemp pointing at Alton Lister when he was on the ground. That's nowhere near the disrespect level of Scottie. DeAndre Jordan and Brandon Knight, that's just wrong place, wrong time. That wasn't disrespect. Tracy McGrady going baseline and dunking on Sean Bradley and saying he wasn't sure he was going to dunk, and then he saw Sean Bradley and then he was positive he was going to dunk. That was very disrespectful. That counts as being disrespectful, but it wasn't the disrespect of Scottie dunking on Pippen-Ewing.
Yeah, some of it is not as much bullying, but more just kicking a man when he's down, right?
Yes.
He's not ready for it.
That's what it was. You didn't have to push Chris Dudley at that time. That is just, and even then, I guess Scottie didn't have to push Pippen-Ewing either, right? But it's different because it's Scottie pushing Pippen-Ewing, not Shaq pushing somebody. It's totally different. Speaking of disrespect, just to tell you how the game has changed these days, Steph Curry got on a roll in the third quarter. He did his little shimmy thing that I guess we acting like is cool, but whatever, right? So he did his little shimmy thing. Gabe, you tell me he apologized for that?
Yeah, apparently his mom asked him to apologize or said he shouldn't have done that. So Mark Spears wrote an article about it on The Undefeated.
Yo, no disrespect, but from what I can tell, she go to a lot of their games. Is this the first time that she ever paid attention to her boy? Does he only do these things when she's not at the games ordinarily? Like, he only does that at the games? And Steph is so cocky with his, right? Steph does all the dancing and shimmying on people and turning around without looking to see if the ball went in and everything else. He's been wild disrespectful to people for all this time, and she finally just noticed. The thing about Steph is, Steph has that crazy level of confidence as a basketball player where everybody else is looking at Steph as an underdog. Steph Curry does not view himself through this lens. And thank goodness he doesn't, by the way. I mean, your dad played in the NBA. That cuts your undercard, like, possibilities down a great deal. I don't care if TJ McConnell's kid made the NBA. Your dad made the NBA. You wasn't exactly fighting against the odds in the way that people put it out there, right? It took him a little time to grow, but that's not quite the same thing. But he's the humble superstar. Right? He carries it very well off the court, and he seems to be a good dude. Like, I got no beef with Steph, but there's so many players who never could have gotten away with carrying it the way that Steph Curry carries. Can you imagine if LeBron carried it the way Steph Curry carries it? That being said, the fact that 2018 disrespect is a shimmy tells you a whole lot about how much different times are versus how times were. Although, Gabe, I would make an argument that because the cats don't really scrap it out anymore, the shimmy becomes even more disrespectful. Because there was a bit of an enforcement constraint on it before. Like, you could do that kind of stuff in the 80s if you want to. You might get stole on. Now, I am not saying that the people who steal off on you in those circumstances are the people who are correct, right? I'm not giving them no slack. I think that they're being weak for it if they do such a thing. However, since nobody can steal off on you, there's more room for you to shimmy. You can't even get hard fouled in the lane anymore. Like, how is it through all this run with Steph Curry, not one person has hit him with, like, the real hard foul? And I'm not talking about, like, Kurt Rambis clothesline and Kevin McHale hard foul. I'm just talking simply, okay, now that you've gotten to the rim, you are going to the free throw line if you can get over there, but I'm going to play the ball. Like, they've just taken that out of basketball completely. Well, if you're going to take that out of basketball completely, then yeah, cats are going to dance. And then it becomes more disrespectful because you just can't do nothing about it. All you can do is just sit there and just...
It's like the dog chasing the cat, and then once the cat gets on top of the house and the dog can't get up there, he's just like doing his little dance up there, knowing that there's no way in hell that he's going to catch him.
Nothing he can do, man. Nothing he can do.
That's Steph.
And that's how it goes, man. But Steph was bad in game 2. Steph was bad in the first half of game 3. And then the third quarter happened and nothing else really mattered. He was bananas in the third quarter. Bananas. And when he's on, I just can't imagine. So, like, let's think about it this way. If LeBron is on something that is unstoppable, I'm sure it feels helpless. But at the same time, you just look at the dude and you're just like, okay, I mean, look at it, you know, like it's LeBron. Like, they only made one of these, right? Steph is a completely different kind of, they only made one of these. But how helpless does it have to feel when, you know, this dude just might pull up from 35 and there's nothing you can do with it? There's nothing at all that you can do about this. Like, the three goes up and it's just wet.
Especially when they've been guarding him almost out at, you know, the halfway mark the whole series.
They're doing what they can. And look, it hasn't been bad, right? Like, I would say that they've been fairly decent in what they've done against Steph. But he's still Steph Curry. Like, he's still that level of good. I also get, by the way, to people who make the argument, and I don't know if I have a tendency to do this also, but I don't totally blame people, but I get the argument on the other side about if Steph doesn't play badly, then all we say is that he's hurt. If he plays well, well, then he's just playing well or whatever it is. But he's coming off an MCL tear. Like, it's not like we're saying this without any injury that has immediately come before it. We also had the 2016 playoffs where they kept saying he wasn't hurt. He was obviously hurt. Like, it did matter that he was hurt. Like, it is something that you should bring up to explain when it is that he doesn't, you know, if that's an explanation or a reasonable hypothesis for why he doesn't play well, then I do think that that's something that you should bring up. That being said, he had all of that rest, and he came out there firing.
So I read somewhere that the difference between him in the first half and him in the second half, someone said that he had some orange slices.
Really?
During halftime. That was the quote. That was the quote. And it just kind of got me hearkening back to, like, you know, soccer as a kid. This it's team, like, oh, man. I'm going to get all juiced up at halftime with my orange slices, and I'm going to get out there and...
This team. The Warriors have such... and it's funny we say that because the Warriors have such an orange slicey feel to them, but the Warriors also have David West and Zaza and JaVale McGee And I don't know that much of, Draymond Green. I don't know that much about that Jordan Bell guy, but I don't get the feeling that he was living that orange slice life too much when he was playing in Little League.
Curry's mom is a soccer mom.
Yeah, but these, I don't feel like the image of the Warriors is dominated by the guys who probably played soccer. The majority of the Warriors are a bunch of guys who probably did not do this. But check this. This is something that's really interesting right now that's going on in the Western Conference Finals. My man Florida James came up with these. In the first two rounds of the playoffs, the Rockets are shooting 51% off of passes from Chris Paul, 43% from three off passes from Chris Paul, 38% in the Western Conference Finals from the field, 28% from three. So where Chris Paul was able to do these things, make these plays that were making things happen for other guys, it's not happening in this series. And my question about that is that about Chris Paul, or is that about the fact that these guys have just had this tendency to stand around? Because their other dudes have been useless. Like outside of that game two, Rockets not named James Harden and Chris Paul put up 84 points on 60% shooting, shot 55% from three. Like it took a lot for them to be as good as they were. In the other games of the series, a combined 94. That's versus 84 for game two. 40% from the field, 30% from three, and they've only gotten to the line 10 times. But I think that's really largely them dudes are just, everybody's just standing around. Like in game two, they got back to moving and you saw what happened. Game three felt more like, once again, like they're standing around. Like James Harden is exhausted from what it takes to do all of that dribbling. Haberstroh talked about this. Ethan Strauss wrote a piece about this for The Athletic. Dribbling does take energy. Like the things that you have to do while dribbling take more energy than what happens when you're moving the ball and guys aren't pounding it. And Harden has looked gassed toward the ends of these games. Gassed toward the end of the games. And the Warriors are lighting him up. Listen to this. James Harden is the primary defender in the two Rockets losses, is giving up 60% from the field, 56% from three. And I don't know how much of that is about James Harden and everything we always have to say about how poor James Harden is at playing defense, or the fact that James Harden is just tired. Chris Paul is kind of old on top of being a bit hobbled, or at least it appears to be. So what are they going to do? Now, to be fair, they've come back like gangbusters off every loss the Rockets have this postseason. Like when they've gone out and they've lost, they've come back and it looked great. But did you see Mike D'Antoni talking about how all the pressure is on the Warriors?
And then Steve Kerr comes back and says, no, the pressure's on them.
Yeah,
but the pressure's on us. The pressure's on both of us.
But here's the thing, though. If you see Mike D'Antoni's face when he was saying that, never has a man looked less credible trying to make a point. Like, there's no way in the world he believed what he was saying. He looks so stressed as he's saying that because he's so defensive. That's the thing always about D'Antoni is he's so defensive. And he looked so stressed. You know how he definitely comported himself in game three as a man that felt like there was some pressure, that there was some stress that was going on there. So, I mean, we'll see what happens in game four. I mean, I still think that there's a chance for the Rockets to win this. And I would appreciate it if the Rockets were to win this. Let's keep this thing going. I think it could be cool, but it's possible this whole Rockets team is just running out of gas because the way they've been playing lately is a way that involves a lot of energy. And there is a finite supply of that in the NBA.
Isn't that exactly what happened with Harden last year? Oh, he ran out of gas.
Yeah, but last year I thought it was totally plausible to say he ran out of gas because there was no Chris Paul last year. He was doing everything for them. But the irony is, I guess it was 2015, the year that the Rockets went to the conference finals where they came back 3-1
against the Clippers. With Harden on the bench.
That's right. But one thing that happened that year was the Clippers absolutely ran out of gas. Where the Clippers starting lineup that year was the best plus or minus 5-man squad in the NBA. And they just ran out of gas because they had no depth. Like, that does happen. But I'll say this, though. Even if it's plausible, if James Harden is the dude that we say he is, if James Harden is the superstar that we say he is, we tend not to let that slide. You know, like if that's how it's going to shake out, that's typically not something that we let go. And I think it's interesting. Harden, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant, superstars that we don't treat like superstars. Kevin Durant went 10 years before he got his ring, and never did we look at him and say, I just don't think that guy has it in him. We had every excuse in the world for why he hadn't won a ring. Steph Curry was out front of one of the greatest collapse in the history of the NBA Finals. And by the way, been to the NBA Finals 3 times, won 2 championships, and never Finals MVP. We don't let everybody slide for that. And with James Harden, yeah, we've gotten him and roasted him when he's had those horrible turnover games to close out series. But this is year 9 for James Harden. And I'm telling you, if James Harden does not get this done here, if y'all really believe that James Harden is a superstar, y'all normally come for people in times like those. We'll see what you do this time. By the way, speaking of energy, something very interesting. So they got all the stats and the numbers and all these things these days, and somebody tracks miles per hour. Yeah, they do that for basketball players, not for cars, basketball players. And the player in the Eastern Conference Finals with the lowest miles per hour apparently is LeBron James. The only player in the playoffs with a lower mile per hour is Zaza. Yeah, that's where LeBron is on this. He's at 3.84 miles per hour. He was asked about it. That led him to do a lot of cursing. He said that they could kiss his bleep. He said that the tracking stuff was bull bleep. He was very, very unhappy with this idea. He also said that he's number 1 in the league at being tired after the game, which, I mean, that's some old woe is me martyrdom type stuff right there. Ain't nobody as tired as me when the game is over. That part is a little bit much. I will say this, though. If he's at 3.84 miles per hour, what I take that to mean is work smarter, not harder, baby. Work smarter, not harder. Why run any faster than you have to? Like, how cold? Like, that's what I'd be saying if I'm LeBron. I'm so cold, man. I'm only going 3 miles an hour, and I'm still killing these cats. Still killing these cats. And those game 3 and game 4. So he put up the 44 in game 4. The game before that, I think he only took like 12 shots or something like that. And what happened was, they decided we're going to lock the Boston Celtics down. Like, he doesn't do this all the time. Like, we're seeing something different out of him defensively. Kyle Korver was out there on Jaylen Brown looking like Andrei Kirilenko. He was taking his shot. He was blocking his shot. And yeah, look, by the way, just ask you this, Gabe, off the top of your head. Do you know how tall Kyle Korver is?
6'7".
He's a sneaky 6'8", I think. I think he's at 6'8", but it's a sneaky 6'8".
I knew I would be close. He's probably that swingman height.
He's probably the worst shot blocking 6'8" player in the history of the NBA. He blocked Jaylen Brown's shot 3 times. 3 times, guys. He blocked his shot 3 times. He was taking the ball from people. Like, that's how you know the Cavs just made a decision that they was about to make this defense thing happen. Because you go through and look at those box scores, those other dudes did not really shoot that well in these 2 games. It's not as though all of a sudden everybody was raining threes. Like game 3, Korver and JR were 7 for 8 for 3-point range combined. But George Hill in that game was like 3 for 9 for 3-point range. Kevin Love was 4 for 12 from the floor. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these other cats ain't just coming out here and beasting, and it felt very similar in this last game. Now, Tristan Thompson is certainly playing a hell of a lot better. But listen to this. Field goal percentage for the Celtics by a Cavaliers defender. Kyle Korver is holding his men to 33% shooting. That's what he did in games 3 and 4. Held his men to 33% shooting. J.R. Smith, 38. LeBron, 42. Kyle Korver was locking down Jaylen Brown. That happened, guys. That really happened. And you know why that happened? I'll tell you why that happened. Ain't hard to think how that happened. Part of it is like home road stuff, right? Because the Celtics are really bad on the road and really good at home. But I think what really happened was LeBron James, year 15. Kyle Korver, year 15. J.R. Smith, year 14. Hey, man, ain't but so much you going to let these little whippersnappers do before you just decide that you had enough. Like, I feel like they kind of old man them after a point. And the Celtics young dudes came out there looking like young dudes. Did you see that where Jason Tatum did that thing where he pushed old buddy in the back? Who knows why he did? And then Jason Tatum immediately turned to the referee and said that he got pushed into the guy's back, except he doesn't have it in him yet to like forcefully argue with the referees because they grown and he's not. And so he wound up looking like he was copping a plea with his parents.
He doesn't have cred like that with the referees yet.
But he's also just 20 years old. Like at 20 years old, if you are a well-mannered young man, you are not at the point of just screaming at these grown-ups about that stuff. And so he looked like he was begging from his parents, except he looked like he was begging from his parents on an obvious lie because nobody pushed him into anybody. Like they all just wound up looking so childish after a point. They lost their composure in that game in a way that makes me wonder, not so much if they can get that composure back or if they just too young for this. Like, they got this done at home. They wore them out those first 2 games. And then game 3, they lost. And I thought that was kind of a reasonable expectation that they lose game 3. Like, a young squad, you can definitely tell they probably looking at themselves like, yeah, look at, man, we got this or whatever. And then they go lose that. And then Terry Rozier came after the game and said that getting the butts kicked was probably the best thing that could happen to them, which is something that I agreed with. And then they went out there and they basically got punked. And that's all it was. And they had a game that they got smoked where LeBron kind of let everybody else do it. They had a game where they got smoked where LeBron did everything. But the constant between those 2 games was the Celtics couldn't buy a basket. Now, yeah, there are some long-term trends on this one. Listen to this. More from Florida James. Terry Rozier shooting 46% from 3 at home, 26 on the road. Marcus Morris, 42 at home, 38 on the road. That's not bad. Jaylen Brown's actually getting a little uptick. Al Horford, 39 to 33. Jason Tatum's about the same on both. And then Marcus Smart, who is shooting a robust 24% at home, is down to a paltry 14 on the road.
Why do all these teams need to get their butt whooped in order to bounce back? I mean, you had Draymond the other day saying like, oh, getting our doors blown off us was the best thing for us.
Because you have to find a way to spin getting your doors blown off into something positive. Otherwise, you just got beat up.
Because all these series are 7 games.
Yes.
And usually it's like you have 4 of them that get thrown out of the way where it's just like blowout. And it ends up being like 3 to 4 really, really competitive games.
Yeah, no. You have to come up with something positive about getting beat down. Otherwise, all that happened was that you got beat down. This is one of those metaphors of life. It's kind of how people who live in places where it's cold try to tell you that it builds character, that it makes them tough. Yeah, good for you. Way to be tough and cold. Like, who needs that? Now, here's the question I raised about the future of this and why this series, and in part, again, why I think this thing is over. I think the Celtics are a little too young for this. But Brad Stevens is brilliant. I think that we all agree upon that. Brad Stevens is a really, really, really good coach. And now, as coach, he is trying to crack the most difficult code, which is LeBron James. Like, that's what he's trying to figure this out. The thing about trying to crack LeBron, though, is that you as coach trying to crack LeBron, you're kind of in competition with Ty Lue, but not really. You're in competition with LeBron James. And as much as people might look at Brad Stevens as like a boy genius type of coach, LeBron James probably is the smartest basketball mind the game has. So Brad's trying to figure this out. Well, now LeBron has figured some things out. And so now that LeBron has figured those things out, are those things that Brad Stevens can figure out how to overcome? And even if he does figure it out, it is much quicker for LeBron to react to what Brad Stevens is doing than for Brad Stevens to react to what LeBron is doing, because LeBron just got to take it up with LeBron. Brad Stevens got to get these other guys to buy in on this. Another thing to keep in mind, by the way, and I guess the Warriors haven't really had this guy, but if you believe that, like, all that leadership and stuff matters, right? If you believe having a leader guy matters, the Celtics don't have leader guy. Al Horford's old, but I don't think anybody thinks that Al Horford is like leader guy.
Oh, you didn't hear Jason Tatum screaming "Playoff Al"? Playoff Al.
Yeah, playoff Al. This is the level Al Horford's been to. This is where it stops. Like, LeBron made that point, and I think there was something to this. He made this point after Game 4 where he's like, look, the guys that have already been here, we traded for some guys, but the guys that have already been here, me, Kevin, well, Kev, he likes to call him Kev, which I bet Kevin Love hates.
Lil Kev?
I bet Kevin Love hates that. I should start calling him Kev. But he was talking about Tristan Thompson, Kevin Love, he mentioned Korver, who just got there like last year, JR. But he's like, yo, man, these guys have been here. I can lean on the fact that they've been here and that we've, everything that comes with that. Even past that, though, George Hill has been there. Jeff Green, we forget, has been there. Jeff Green went to the NBA Finals with the Celtics in 2010. He's been around this level of basketball, this where they are right now. The Celtics don't really have it. Like, the closest that Al Horford has gotten is basically here. I guess Aaron Baines was on the 2014 Spurs, but he's still Aaron Baines. But the guys that they're leaning on and they're dependent on, they haven't done this very much. They're new to this. Like, even Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown was on the team last year, but Jaylen Brown wasn't asked to be what he is right now on that team. Jason Tatum hadn't even been to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. So, this is new, and normally in this league, you got to kind of bump your head against these things a couple times before you're able to break through. That's typically how this goes. Now, like I say, they've got it at home. They are a much better team at home. Maybe they wind up pulling it out there at home for that reason. All right, what we've got here for you is something that I've never, I can't remember seeing such a thing like this. And if you let me know if you can remember, but just off the top of my head, I cannot remember this. So there's a gentleman on the Bucks named Sterling Brown, Milwaukee Bucks, that is, named Sterling Brown. Apparently, Sterling Brown was arrested in January in Milwaukee and wound up on the business end of a taser. Played a game that night, by the way. Got pulled over, got tased, played a game that night. And when he was asked about it that night, he said it was personal. He said he did not want to talk about it. However, people have been bracing now for a few weeks for the release of the video that the cops' dash cam took of this encounter. And they are nervous. One official who works for the city of Milwaukee went and spoke at a church. And when he went and spoke at this church, he told people that they were going to need help to get through. They needed their help to get through this because it's going to be a trying time. One source told the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel he isn't combative, isn't threatening, very bad. That's what's being described as being the case in the videotape. Let me get this other quote. This is from the mayor, by the way. The mayor says, I'm going to let the release of that speak for itself, but yes, I definitely have concerns after watching that video. 3 sources who have watched the video told the Journal Sentinel and the NBA that the NBA player does not appear to do anything provocative during the arrest. So he was tased. He was not shot. But let me tell you what I find interesting about this. This has been pretty clearly and carefully negotiated as every step that's going to take place. The video is going to be released by Sterling Brown's lawyers, but I would love to know when we find out what exactly the steps were that were taken to get us to the point that we're at right now. And this is why I say that. He played a game that night and was visibly bruised. And that's why people asked him about that. And he said that it was personal and that he did not want to talk about it. For all this to have taken place without people really knowing it and for the city to really be taking it seriously in the way that they seem to be taking it seriously, this sounds like, and I'm saying this exactly happened, but something like this happened where Sterling Brown went and talked to the team and went and talked to that real money. And then that real money went over there and then talked to the police. And then they started talking about what was going to happen. Because now they're we're going to release this at a time. There's a little word trickling out about what it's going to be. The player has clearly not said anything, no post on social media about it or anything else. So there seems to be some level of negotiation that's going on that must be contentious to a degree, if for no other reason than the fact that his lawyers will be the ones who put it out, right? I asked NBA owners this question, same question that I ask all the owners in the league. And by the way, don't blame me for bringing this stuff up. I'm not the one who tased that dude, right? Blame them. We're hearing more now in this Colin Kaepernick story about Pro Football Talk has a report that it says that they have seen the internal documents that show that many teams viewed Colin Kaepernick as a starting caliber NFL quarterback. It's a story that won't go away. He's not going to come back into the NFL, I don't think, but it's kind of the story that won't go away. It's always going to stick around. But never forget that the genesis of this is not about the national anthem. The genesis of this was really about Kaepernick and what he said initially about police brutality. That is what got us into this. That is really at the nexus of the controversy. The national anthem and the protests that take place during it are offshoots of that, because it starts with it. That's why he's doing it in the first place, is that part right there, right? I don't understand why NFL and NBA owners or everybody else doesn't get that your players are the ones that are riding around and could potentially have such a thing like this happen to them. These players that you spend all this money on, these players that in large part are viewed as assets to the corporations for which they work, or the companies or the people. That's how people view them. So these are your players as the parlance goes. You just going to have these people out here lighting up your players? Because clearly they're not, right? Because clearly, as this thing has come up, it seems like there's been some help in getting this done on all channels. But I don't understand why it is that the leagues and teams do not view this through the lens of these are our players. Even if you don't respect their humanity, respect your own money. That these things that are happening in these streets and the things that people are protesting, these things are talking about, how easily they can come and affect what happens to your players. And understand, them folks in the streets don't know necessarily or care whether or not they're your players. John Henson had a situation up there in Milwaukee where he went to a jewelry store and acted like they were closed and called the police. on him. And if you can't look at John Henson and see that that's a basketball player, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't. With the NFL, it's become tricky to figure out what's going on with like the Players Coalition and the meetings with their owners, because I don't feel like the owners care at all about what the cause is. I feel like the owners are just like, give us back our national anthem. Right? We'll try to figure something out if he'll just give us back our national anthem. That's the only thing they want. And it makes you wonder about like the sincerity of the things that they do if they don't actually care about the cause or if they don't understand what the issue is. And it makes you feel like they're just negotiating for your silence. Like that's the only thing. That's what it feels like. But man, there's a dude named Fred Weary. He used to play for the Houston Texans, you know, Bob McNair's team or whatever. He got pulled over once and accused the police of tasering, like brutality for tasering him for no reason on the side of the road. And it was at a different time, so people didn't really pay that much attention to it or whatever it is. But hey, man, if that happens on Sunday on the way to the game, you sure Fred Weary going to be able to play? Because that's what they care about. So all these things can happen to your players. Why would you not want to be proactive in something that allows you to look out for your players? And the reason is probably very simple. They are afraid that by looking out for their players in that way, their fans will turn on them. Because as I've said many times before, as much as I get accused of thinking that everybody is racist, it ain't me. The people that run these organizations and the way they handle this anthem stuff and everything else, they're the ones that are telling you that they believe that their fans have too much of a problem with this stuff to handle it. And why do you think they think the fans have too much of a problem with this stuff to handle it? Why do you think they're afraid of taking stands on some of this stuff? They are afraid that their fans are going to have a problem with it. They passing the buck off on you on these things to the point of their own detriment. But you see what's happened here with the Bucks. And then look, Milwaukee, I mean, you can look up like race relations in the history of Milwaukee. Milwaukee has been, I've seen it written that it is the most segregated city in the United States. Like it's a place that operates on that level. It is also, though, an interesting place with regards to the police department, because I think a lot of you are going to think about David Clark when you think about Milwaukee because he was the sheriff up that way. But he is not the chief of police. The gentleman that's chief of police, I saw him on one of these panel shows a year or two ago talking about things. I found him to be very interesting. You know, he made this point that I don't always ride with, but I still thought was interesting to hear him say, was that he feels like as a police officer, part of why he has a problem with the way that he feels that people are attacking him is that he feels no one is doing more actual on-the-ground work to try to keep black people safe than the police department of your city. And there's a part of that I don't really agree with, but I understand the point that he's making. Like, if you're somebody who does that job as a police officer and actually cares about it, then that's the way that you're going to view your work, is that you care about the people and that you are trying to protect them, and that these crimes that are happening in these neighborhoods, we're the ones that are trying to enforce them so that law-abiding citizens can be safe, like all of that stuff. Either way, that's not the kind of thing you hear from David Clark. Agree with it, disagree with it, whatever it is. So I find it interesting that the police department seems to be working with everybody because they normally just fight all this stuff. You know, like normally they'd be in the streets right now saying, how dare you come at us about this? The mayor would not say what he said unless he felt like it was okay, because the mayor can never afford to have the police department turn on him. You can see that in the politics of every city in America. So this is going to happen. This is going to come out. You are going to tell people to stick to sports. That's fine. Most of them honestly will, because they don't really know how to talk about this stuff. I just ask you to think about it from some different angles about this. It doesn't have to be some massive race-related discussion. I am just asking you to think about the fact that these matters directly affect the owners of pro teams. These owners directly affect these athletes, and it can affect the bottom line in many different ways. Because think about this. Let's say a dude gets jammed up improperly by the police. Like, it shouldn't happen, but he gets jammed up by the police. So dude gets jammed up by the police. He comes out and he says he's been jammed up by the police. He protested or says whatever. He does this thing about getting jammed up by the police. Do you realize how many people are going to turn on that dude simply for the fact that he got jumped on by the police? Because if he says anything about how it was wrong, then people just have a reflex to go against them, or to go to both sides, or to wait for all the information or everything else, and then wait for whatever little small piece of information and then turn on that person. You've seen that happen many times before, right? So if you own a team, you're at risk of this every time however many dudes on your roster go out the door. Don't you want to try to look out for that? Don't you want to try to protect your investment? You ain't got to be a good dude. Just don't be a dumb one.
We know you can't be on top of all the news and information of the day. No need for the social media feeds. We got you. Now, if you haven't heard.
All right, Bo. Story number one of the day for if you haven't heard comes from the tech industry.
I'm Jefferson Graham with USA Today. YouTube has a new online music service. YouTube wants to take on Amazon and Apple and Spotify by weaning people away from those services to pay money to listen to music on YouTube. There's also an ad-supported version as well. The gist with Google, which owns YouTube, is that Google knows more about you and thus can better recommendations. They've been reading your email. They've been going through your calendar listings. They know what your online search is for. They know what artist you like. That's the whole sales proposition for YouTube Music. It'll be interesting to find out just how much they know. Amazon, Apple, and Spotify also go through all your searches and they make recommendations as well. Some work, some don't. We'll find out. The YouTube Music is launching Tuesday, but it's a soft launch and it really won't show up to people for a few weeks.
So here's the problem. I feel like if you're trying to get into the streaming game, it's over. Because what can you offer me that is that much better than whatever streaming service I'm already using? Like, it's just inertia. You know, I'm already on the streaming service that I'm on. All right. I got pretty much every song I need over here. All right. Why am I going to flip all this up now? Like, why am I going to come up with a new habit? And, of course, YouTube has the other problem, which is after you've been giving it away for free, man, it's hard to charge people. No matter what it is. Somebody new could come in with the exact same product that you have, but at least they never tried to give it away for free in the first place. Like, once you give it away for free, that's the macro level problem of the internet, right? Everything on the internet used to be free. People just don't want to pay for it. So when you started charging what they do, find ways to get the stuff for free.
There's a reason as to why, like, Donald Glover's This Is America video has like 150 million views on YouTube because people can just Google search it and get to it for free.
Yep. And been doing it for a very, very, very long time. Now they want to turn it around. I mean, I don't blame them for this, but I think that this is ultimately going to shut down. They just got it. Apple got in and Apple's got all kinds of like built-in market advantages and stuff. But Apple even got in the game late. Like if there was ever a misjudgment that Steve Jobs made, it was that he thought that people would want to own music and that they would not want to rent music. But what he misunderstood, I think, is people would rather own music if it came with a physical copy. And since it doesn't come with a physical copy anymore, then they'll just rent it. Now, you take it all back. That's fine.
Are you concerned about the privacy implications with it being tied to Google and that sort of stuff? I mean, like he said, you know, everything you search already is like kind of tied into Spotify and that sort of stuff. That's how they make you playlists,
yeah,
right?
Google's already got me. Like, it's over now. Unless I turn into a new person, it's already a wrap.
All right, story number 2 of the day comes from the transportation industry.
My name is Adam Popescu. I'm a writer for the Washington Post. I'm also a native Angelino. And last week I wrote about Elon Musk's plan to dig under our city. And I really want it to happen. I think so many Angelinos want it to happen. That's why last week there was a event where he spoke about these plans. Problem was he was 30 minutes late to his own event, and he didn't really provide the details that make people feel comfortable. He says he's not going to be digging under people's houses or businesses, which sounds very challenging, and we're not really sure how that could even happen. And he also has no experience running a public transportation system. He says they're going to charge $1 a rider, and they can hold up to 16 people in these zero-emission pods that are going underground. People are very worried and very nervous and very confused. On one side, there's even folks suing him. City of Culver City doesn't want him drilling under there. And then on the other side, there's all the fans. This guy is awesome. He just made a flamethrower. He's so cool. He's the Howard Hughes of our time. And the problem is we don't really know what is going on. He's been granted an exemption from the city of Los Angeles to build a test tunnel, and they don't have to have an environmental review. And that's an issue because you're supposed to have a review before you even put a shovel in the ground. Is it because he's so famous and because folks want to work with him and want to be associated with that greatness? Possibly. The test tunnel is going through, but after that happens, there's going to be having to be a big environmental review. City council will vote again. But the main issue is we just don't know what's really going on underground. And people are taking at face value his word, and that's just not good enough. This is a major project, a lot of questions, a lot of issues. And for people like me, regular Angelinos, we want it to work, but we just want to know what's really going on.
All right, I can keep this brief. I'm not saying that Elon Musk is a con man, but I'm not saying he isn't. Like, did that not sound a lot like the monorail on The Simpsons?
Yeah, it sounds a lot like a carnival guy where it's like, step right up, and here, put your token in and you can get a rocket ship to space or 10,000 leagues under the sea.
Yeah, I don't feel good about anything I'm hearing right now from this guy. Not at all. And I've been reading up on like Tesla and like the production according to scale and actual profits and stuff like this. Yeah, check that out. I think it was Business Insider or Forbes did something comparing Tesla to all the other car companies. Give that a look. I found it illuminating, though not quite flattering to Tesla.
Story number 3 of the day comes from the science industry, I would say.
My name is Pascal Wallisch, and I serve as a clinical assistant professor at New York University, and sometimes I also write for Slate. Last week, a recording surfaced that some people hear as Laurel and others hear as Yanny. The reason we know this is not a trick is that different people can hear different things on the same device. Subjectively, even more compelling is if you are first able to hear one thing, then, usually on a different device, something completely different. What is really going on is that this is a Franken word. It contains components of both words, but it is also missing components from both words. This creates sufficient ambiguity so that the brain has to guess. Of course, guesses can be wrong, and different people can make different guesses. So what determines what people guess? If this phenomenon is anything like the black and blue or white and gold dress from a couple of years ago, lifestyle choices and life experiences matter. For instance, night owls had a tendency to see the dress as black and blue due to the fact that they are more likely to be exposed to artificial light. There might also be other stuff going on. For instance, fatigue. I usually hear Laurel, but not if I'm very tired. Then I always hear Yanny. We are at the very beginning of understanding this, but it casts being right in a new light. Often, people think in terms of right and wrong. So if there's a disagreement, both sides tend to think they are right and the other side is ill-informed, malicious, or crazy, or a combination of these. Phenomena like this suggest it might just be different perspectives on a greater underlying reality.
I heard
Laurel.
I hear Yanny.
Laurel.
I hear Yanny.
Laurel.
Yeah, I've heard Yanny each time. What have you heard?
Laurel.
I've heard Yanny each time. Every
what
single
does that
time
say
I've heard
about us?
I don't know. I love this idea that my brain is just guessing, but I'm trying to figure out how educated the guess is if the two choices are Laurel or Yanny.
So maybe you're tired, Bo.
It's possible.
That's why you're hearing Yanny, according to our professor.
It is entirely possible that is the case, but I was shocked in hearing him just how fascinating that all proved to be. But, of course, on the Internet, it had turned into a point of argument. Like, I feel like on the Internet, all this stuff starts off as joke argue, and then we're just in such a habit, and so it just turns into real argue.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong. No, we can't just all be different, right?
Yeah, I can't tell ever on the Internet anymore who's joking. Because it's entirely possible that they're not. There's nothing so absurd that people can't be mad about it.
What really threw me for a loop was when I got on Twitter and I was trying to listen to it and hear for myself what, my response would be. Everybody was duping each other with making videos that were supposed to be like Laurel or Yanny. Mm-hmm. And then you go to play it and it's like some funny clip that has nothing to do with anything.
Gotcha.
So I was like, trying to show my wife like, hey, what do you hear? What do you hear? And then it's like, some guy's like, yo!
Working my way back to you.
Oh my God.
Well, that's not the one song. Whatever that the Rick Roll song.
What song were you talking about?
Never gonna let that.
Never gonna give you
there you
up.
Go.
Never
there
gonna
you
let
go.
you down.
Yeah, the Rick Roll joint.
Because that's not who's that white guy with the beard? Michael something?
Mike McDonald.
Yeah.
No, it's Rick Springfield. It's Rick Springfield.
Hey, this is Bomani. You have reached the right time voicemail. Say whatever you want. Get creative with it. But this is your place to talk back to the show. So talk back. Peace.
All right. This week, we got one of our favorite segments where you, the listeners, called our voicemail line at 860-516-4119 and asked for advice from the one and only DJ Mike Hitman in Chicago. Now, Mike, before we get to the advice, man, what's up with your Celtics? They lost those last 2 games kind of bad.
Oh, they lost, boy. They just got to get back home, get some real homemade cooking. There's nothing in Cleveland to eat. They're hungry. You got to get back to the Beantown and eat some real food. There's only garbage food in Cleveland. Even the garbage man don't eat that stuff out there. We're going to win it. We're going to take it at 7. Right now, we're looking bad. But we're going home. Georgia Brown. That's all they got here. Once they hear the music going on, and we're taking it 6 or 7. I think we're taking it 7. And LeBron James can't say barbershop because he's going to have to go to barbershop get a real line.
All right, Mike, you ready to help the people out with this advice?
Yes.
All right, Gabe, let's roll.
What to talk about.
All right, here's the first one.
Hey, Bo, DJ Mike. So recently divorced with kids. Got to get back into the dating game. How do I pull it off? Help me out, man.
Okay, he recently got a divorce. Okay, here go a good one for you, young man. Take your time and do it right. You ain't got to rush. Make sure you visit the kids. Take care of your kids first. And then hit the scenery. Like, go to the library. Nice ladies be at the library. Go to your local laundromat. Because when you go to the laundromat, you know they clean. They clean it up. They know how to wash. And hit your main club that you usually don't go. Clubs that you got to pay $20 to get in. And that's when you find good ladies. And then, my main choice, always find the best store like Neiman Marcus. Come on, there's a young lady in there, go to Neiman Marcus. You know she got a job and she got benefits. That's how you get in the dating game. Mike, what about your tie?
Mike, you always about the woman with benefits.
That's right. Gotta have benefits. One day you might lose your teeth. Somebody gotta have insurance.
Got a point. Gabe, who's up next?
All right, here's the second one.
Hey, this is Marv from Connecticut. Hey, DJ Mike, quick question. I'm DJing my grandmother's 75th birthday party. What song do you suggest I should play first to get everybody out on the dance floor? Bomani, what up, man?
Marv.
What song you gonna play? 1991, Purple Rain. You gotta play Prince, man. You cannot go to a party and not play Prince. See, how old she said she was for?
75.
You gotta play Prince. Everybody knows Prince at the party. You can play Purple Rain, 1999. You can play Roddy City. But if it was me, I'm coming in with Roddy City.
I remember. I've been to a wedding where you played Roddy City. It was jamming.
That's right. You can't go wrong with Prince. And it's a 70 party, too. Everybody old. And then most of them got hearing aids. So play Roddy City. They can't hear the lyrics.
There we go. Gabe, who's up next?
All right, here's the third and final one of the day.
What's going on? This is Will. I need some advice. I have an all-inclusive trip planned to Dominican Republic with some of my friends. Some guys, some girls. How do I convince my wife to allow me to just go on this trip without her with my friends? Because I don't know how she's going to take it. Thanks.
Young man, the best thing to do is call your airline ticket bookie and get another ticket for her. Because if you don't take her along, somebody else going to be at home and your stuff going to be packed out the house. So the best thing you do, take your wife with you. You married her. It's a one-deal deal. So you got to take your wife and include her into the trip. You can't go on a trip with you and your friend and some other girl. That don't look right, young man. Involve your wife. That's the one you choose to marry. That's the one you got to take with you. So that's the best thing that you do. If you don't, your stuff would be packed out, and somebody else would be knocking at your door. Hello.
Hey, Mike. I appreciate it, man.
I'm good, Bo.
All right, Mike. All right, we are wrapping up the right time. Before we do, a reminder, 30 for 30 Podcast Season 3 is now available. This season takes you deep into the complicated world of Bikram Yoga. Its founder used connections with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, John McEnroe, and other stars to spread his hot, aggressive yoga to the world. But the Bikram Guru's status enabled increasingly dark behavior. It's a story you have to hear to believe. So subscribe and listen right now to 30 for 30 Podcast in the Listen tab of the ESPN app or on Apple Podcasts. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We get this done twice a week. Gabe Bassane handles everything behind the scenes. Thanks to him. Also, thanks to Jefferson Graham of USA Today and the Talking Tech Podcast for telling us about his article on YouTube launching a music service. Also, thanks to Adam Popescu of the Washington Post, who wrote a story entitled Elon Musk doesn't want anyone slowing down his plan to dig tunnels under L.A. Check that at WashingtonPost.com. And thanks to Pascal Wallish. Pascal's story is all the explanations you've heard so far about Laurel versus Yanny are probably wrong. Check that out at Slate.com. And, of course, thanks to my man, DJ Mike Hitman. Talk to you guys in a couple of days. Take it easy.
Thanks for checking out The Right Time with Bomani Jones podcast.
You can listen or subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Right Time
with Bomani Jones.